Hello, my name is Dr. Alex Carter. Welcome to this short video on the philosophy of sport. Philosophers are not renowned for their sporting prowess. The first and perhaps last example of a philosopher sportsman is Albert Camus. He was a goalkeeper on the pitch and an existentialist off of it. Yet, if sporting philosophers are few and far between, the reverse does not hold. There are a plethora of sportsmen who philosophize, from Shaquille Big Aristotle O'Neal to the endlessly quotable Bill Shankly. Sport seems to lend itself to a search for deeper meaning. It is also fair to say that sport serves as a source of meaning for a huge number of people, philosophers included. People like sport, scratch that, they love sport. Well, I don't personally, but this fact has never prevented me from being fascinated by the phenomenon, the spectacle of sport. Neither has it stopped me advocating for more sport in philosophy and more philosophy in sport. My interest in sport derives, in large part, from the fact that, like philosophy, sports are founded on rules, and it is this common interest in rules and rule breaking that I will focus on in this video. Let us begin by asking, what is a game? We could ask, what is a sport? But it is more helpful at this stage to focus on the broader term, game. Traditionally, philosophers have tried to explain what words mean by specifying their essential properties. What can't they do without? Sports, and more generally games, provide another interesting test case for this way of thinking about what words mean. Together, let's have a go at answering the following question. What do all games have in common? In his book, The Grasshopper, Bernard Suits, the philosopher, says that what all these games have in common is that they have a voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. But as just mentioned, there are problems with this definition. On the one hand, it's too broad. It includes some things that we wouldn't call sport. For example, employment or education. On the other hand, it's too narrow. If anything, sport is the attempt to overcome particular obstacles. It is unclear, therefore, what voluntary refers to here. A footballer can't just decide to pick up the ball and run with it. It is true that sports are made up, but this does not distinguish sport from economics, farming, or even philosophy. One philosopher of the early 20th century, Ludwig Wittgenstein, didn't only interest himself in what we mean by the word game. He argued that the meanings of all words could be understood in terms of language games. Language games are specific areas of discourse. For instance, giving road directions, wine tasting, sports commentary, and so on are all types of language game. They play by their own set of rules. One implication of this is that we come to understand words in the same way that we come to learn how to play a particular game, namely by playing it. Much as we are born into a family, we are born into playing games. In this way, Wittgenstein strengthens the analogy between the playing of games and the use of language. Contrary to Bernard Suits, Wittgenstein argues that no one thing can be pointed to as the essential feature of all games. Why then do we use one word, game, to refer to many different types of activity? Well, according to Wittgenstein, specific games are related to one another by a host of family resemblances. Just as I might have my aunt's nose, who in turn has my mother's eyes, and my brother's cheekbones, different games might share a range of different features without all sharing one in particular. One game might be one with a high score, whilst the winner of another game might be the one who scores lowest. Yet both involve firing sharp objects at targets, and so on and so on. One game might only be distantly related to another game, even if neither shares any feature in common, but perhaps each shares features with a third game. This philosophical discussion has real-world consequences. In 2015, the English Bridge Union sought to define the historic card game bridge as a card-based mined sport. The courts denied the request on the grounds that it was characterized by a physical element that appears to be negligible. The implication here is that sports are essentially physical and bridge is not. Yet, whilst the court's appeal to an essential feature of all sports falls afoul of the same problem as Suit's definition of sport, for instance, we might say that some other sports do not involve much physical exertion either, it is not obvious that a decision based on family resemblances would have gone the other way. What do you think? Do card games have enough features in common with different sports to be treated as part of the same family? Or are card games, as the name suggests, more closely related to non-sporting games like chess? Now, let us turn to the related question of what rules are. Not all games involve rules, but specific games can be characterized by their rules. In football, the rules say that only the goalie can handle the ball. In handball, the rules state that all players can use their hands. So what is a rule? Some rules are explicit and others implicit. The explicit rules might state that when a ball is caught on a volley, by which I mean the ball bounced before it was caught, then the person hitting the ball is not out. In cricket, this rule is traditionally observed. Fielding players do declare when a ball is caught on a volley. The reverse takes place in baseball, where players make no such declaration. Here, the difference might be explained by saying that cricketers place the rules above their team, yet baseball players put their team first. What rule are they following in each case? Is it explicit or is it implicit? But some things that look like rules can be more or less fundamental than rules. In rugby, I'm told, players often punch and kick each other in the scrum. This is against the rules, but notably players rarely, if ever, pull each other's hair. So what kind of rule is this? One way to explain what a rule is would be to treat them as commands. This gives us one potential answer to the question, when is a rule not a rule? The answer being, when the rule is broken. A command is only a command if it's followed, and a rule is only a rule if it is upheld. So what is the nature of the relationship between games and rules? Are the rules part of the game, in which case the game is about more than the rules, or are the rules and the game one and the same thing? Another way to put this is to ask, is it cheating if the referee doesn't see it? Or else we might ask, can a referee make a mistake? I can already hear sports fans shouting, of course referees make mistakes, of course it's cheating if the referee doesn't see it. But the words of course are a red rag to a bullish philosopher, and as a philosopher, I cannot take these things for granted. So why might we think that referees can't make mistakes? Well, the referee or umpire is usually, although not always, the absolute judge of what happens on the pitch. To imagine otherwise is to imagine that a perfect game could exist, where a referee is not needed, perhaps in some alternate reality or in an idealized version of this world. Wittgenstein returns once again to help clarify things here. In the Philosophical Investigations, Wittgenstein outlines what has become known as Wittgenstein's paradox. The paradox concerns rules and when and how they should be followed. The details of the paradox aren't vital, but what matters is that Wittgenstein says that there can be no ultimate rule that explains when and how to apply a particular rule. To take a case in point, a referee can apply the offside rule as he sees fit because there is no further rule to explain how referees should apply the rules. This might seem odd, but if we imagine that there was such a rule, then presumably there would need to be a rule to explain how it should be applied as well, and another rule to confirm the application of that rule, and so on, and on, and on, and on. In short, the line has to be drawn somewhere. There must be some point at which we can say the buck stops here. In most sports, this is already in the rules. The buck stops with the referee, umpire, or judge. In reality, of course, we know that this philosophical argument is unlikely to satisfy the fan of a losing team that is on the wrong side of a referee's application of a particular rule. So where do you draw the line? Are the fans the final arbiter of whether or not a player has cheated? Or does a governing body like FIFA have the final say? But here is a final question for you. What if the final judge gets things wrong? And is there any reason why we can't keep saying that the referee is the final judge? Thank you for watching. If you want to know more about the philosophy of sport, you might wish to consider studying philosophy at the University of Cambridge's Institute of Continuing Education. Links to our short and award-bearing courses can be found on this page. Thank you.